It's so nice to be with you. Have you had a good morning so far?
Excellent.
Good. So imagine walking into a classroom where students are not just passive recipients of information, but active learners in their own learning journeys. Picture a scenario where student stands before their peers, confidently explaining a complex topic with their classmates listening intently, asking questions, engaging in meaningful discussion. This is not a far-off dream, but a powerful reality achievable through this concept that I call, and I think I'm not the only one, student as teacher. I recall a day when Sarah, a typically reserved student, was given an opportunity to lead a discussion on a recent science project. She explained the process and her results. Her enthusiasm was contagious. Her peers were not only captivated, but inspired to dive deeper into the subjects themselves. By the end of at the end of the session, Sarah had transformed from a quiet observer into a confident educator. This experience underscored the incredible potential of students taking on a teacher role. So today I want to delve into this idea and the benefits of this approach. And it's supported by research and honestly practical understanding. You know, as teachers, you know the subjects that you teach better because you teach them yourselves. So this is a great way, I think, to underscore what Heather was talking about so powerfully over the past couple of days. The idea that we do not deliver to students what they can come up with on their own. And this kind of idea of student as teacher can really revolutionize our classrooms and foster self-directed, lifelong learners, which is what we want, right? We want them seeking wisdom. So research supports this kind of student as teacher approach. A study published in the Journal of Educational Psychology found that students who taught what they had learned showed improvement and understanding and retention compared to those who simply reviewed the material themselves. Another study indicated that peer teaching enhances student performance, engagement, and motivation. And again, I don't have to give you the studies. You know it yourself, right? The benefits of this idea of student as teacher runs deep. One is deep understanding. When students actually teach, they have to understand the material thoroughly, and they don't want to feel foolish, right? So they'll dive in deep, they'll make sure that they're prepared, and the process of explaining concepts to others reinforces their own knowledge, identifies any gaps in their understanding as well. It also enhances engagement. There's nothing like taking on the role as teacher. It increases the student's personal engagement, but then it also increases the engagement of the peers. In our school, we have a kind of a culture, I guess you would say, that students stand when they ask or answer a question. Now, there are numerous benefits to this, but one is that we want students to feel confident and comfortable with public speaking. But it's amazing what other benefits happen. When a student has to stand and ask a question or answer it, they think twice before. So other than the, ooh, I forgot. We don't hear that. They know what they want to say when they stand up. They also, it's amazing, all heads turn to that student that's standing. And so it really increases that engagement in the classroom and excitement. It also develops good critical thinking skills. Students develop a variety of skills, like communication skills, organization, even leadership when they take on a teaching role. It requires them to be articulate in their ideas, have a logical organization, and an ability to manage a group. When students know that they're going to be up in front of a class, they start to be a better student because they know how challenging it is to be up in front of the class as well. So there's all these beautiful benefits, both educationally and emotionally for students. It increases their confidence. There's something about taking on that role. I teach formal logic, as well as classical rhetoric, but that formal logic class, it's a beast. It's a beast. But there's something about our students when I review the work that they do. Every day we do this. I have students do their homework, and then we come back and we review the work so that a couple of things happen. One is I want to make sure students understand. So I'll call on students to review how to, let's say, a syllogism, a categorical syllogism. So I'll say, professor, I'll call them professor. You lead us through how you came up with this answer. And then if someone has a question, they direct it to the professor. So it's amazing how much these students have to then know. It's not that they just got the right answer. They need to articulate how they got that answer to their peers. And they might even have to explain it another way, because there's many ways to describe how to complete something. And so these students need to then kind of think and say, what do I know about this student that helps me then explain this a different way for them, which again helps solidify their own understanding and knowledge. And there's nothing like being called professor. It's amazing how I visibly see them stand up straighter. It promotes peer learning. Students often relate better to their peers. When they learn from one another, it can seem more relatable and feel like a more supportive learning environment. It's not just big teacher, adult teacher standing up in the room. I often, when I interview new families, and at the end of an interview, if I think that the student and family is a good fit, I will look the students in the eye and say, I want you to know that in every classroom, there's not just one teacher. Every student is a teacher, because with every question you ask and every question you answer, you are teaching your fellow student. Again, their eyes get bright. They start to recognize what their role really is. And it's not a passive learner at all. They are engaged in what it is. So from the very beginning, that is my expectation of every student. And as the head of school, I make that apparent. So from the very beginning, helping students understand their role in that process, it's important. So practical ideas for how to teach, because it's not only in lecture format, right? Often it's not in that way. So let's talk about some ways where students can lead a discussion and be teacher. One is in Socratic circles or seminars. How many of you have participated in a Socratic circle or seminar? Okay, all right. So a Socratic circle is one where students are engaged in dialogues about a particular text or topic, and they're answering questions in a stimulated way relating to that concept. So I'd like to break it down because it's simple, and yet it's important to get it right. So imagine a classroom where students have been given a particular passage, maybe an article or a passage of a story to read. You ask students to prepare for a Socratic seminar. You may have a particular prompt for them, or depending on the age of the student, you may ask them to come. We call it ticket. You've got a ticket to get into your Socratic seminar because our students love this kind of engagement. So they have to come prepared with annotated text, highlights, questions. They've got to come to the discussion with questions themselves. The way we run Socratic seminars is we've got an inner circle and an outer circle. The inner circle, I take half of the class, put them in the inner circle, the other half of the class on the outer circle. For some period of time, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, I ask the students in the center circle to discuss. They are to ask good questions, they are to engage in debate with the people in that inner circle, while the outer circle is paying close attention to how the discussion is going. They're writing notes about what's going on in the inner circle. After that 20-minute time and the engagement is done, then we talk about what happened in the circle. I let the outer circle make observations about what has happened. What is beautiful about this idea of inner circle and outer circle is because often all of us, and especially young people, when they're engaged in discussion, they're just trying to think of the next thing they want to say, right? They're missing the beauty of learning how to actually have an effective discussion. So when you're on that outer circle, you are simply paying attention to, well, what is a good question? How can someone answer a question well? Did they have evidence for what it is they were saying or not? Did they try to include all people in the circle? And so it is amazing how much better of communicators they can be by learning how to communicate by simply observing other people do it well or poorly. And so by the end of the year, our kids are excellent at asking good, engaging questions of each other because they've learned how to do it by observing their fellow students being their teachers in such a way. Socratic, if you don't have a large classroom, you certainly can do just one circle and have that engagement happen. But I think to really learn how to engage, you have that double circle. Okay? So students can be each other's teachers in that way. Any questions about Socratic seminars or Socratic circles? Those of you who have conducted them, what benefits have you seen coming out of using Socratic seminars? Yes?
Turn taking. So waiting to speak, and also respect for disagreements.
Yes. Yes. I don't know. Was everyone able to hear that? Taking turns and respect for disagreements, which is so very important today, right? People don't know how to disagree. And so either you have people be quiet because they don't want to offend, right? Or they're attack dogs. And what I love about the story that Heather told in the first session where she had them be face to face, because it is amazing how that orientation changes everything. When you physically put students in a circle and they have to look at each other, then you're right, they tone down the heat, because you'll have some of those students who are really eager to, lash out or get their opinion expressed. And if it's at the teacher, their tone is different than when it's face-to-face. And frankly, if it doesn't change when they're face-to-face, then their peers are going to tell them. And that's something they wouldn't have said if we were just in a normal situation like this one. But because it's a Socratic seminar, someone will say, well, I think you were a little aggressive when you said that, or you shut her down too quickly and you didn't let her speak. So they self-correct, which again, teaching is not just, student as teacher is not just communicating the subject, but it's also learning how to negotiate with one another, right? And be better humans, because that's what we're trying to help our students do. Any other observations from Socratic seminars? Yes?
It deepens the student's ability to actually support their thinking.
Yes.
And they also are able to ask better questions themselves.
Exactly, because someone will make a claim, and once students start to really learn how to do this, by the way, if you have not used Socratic seminars before, your first one, they're going to stumble through it. Just like, frankly, your first year of teaching, you stumble all the way through that year, right? So students as teacher, it takes time and helping students understand how, and you as a teacher asking good questions to help them formulate good questions themselves. So if you notice something happening in a Socratic seminar, you can say, well, I noticed that Johnny made this claim. Did anyone want to ask him a question about that? So you help them learn how to be better teachers themselves. Yes?
Give us an idea about how young you could successfully do a Socratic.
So it's interesting. I'll tell you, 24 hours ago, I would have told you middle school and above. We use something called literature circles for younger students, and I think they work really well. So a literature circle is you assign students a role. Some of them are observing connections. Some of them are observing maybe the setting or particular characters. Some vocabulary, you assign, I don't teach little ones, so I can't remember all the roles that my teachers have come up with, but if you Google literature circles, you will come up with some good roles. So you assign students a different role, and then they have a discussion about a particular chapter in a book that they're reading, with each one of them having a particular role or something to add to the discussion. And so that's a nice way to do it. Heather was describing this Tower of Babel illustration, which I thought was fascinating. Frankly, I would not have done it with students who are that young. And she would call that kind of a Socratic circle. I don't know that I would have called it that. So in that case, I thought that was very powerful. And you can have students stand up and say, this is what I think. I would say it's more of a presentation, but then you want the students to ask good questions. So you're kind of teaching them how to do this kind of Socratic circle when they get a little bit older. But when they're presenting their own work, their own ideas, and then having to defend why they did what they did in their work, I think is really powerful. Excellent. Debates. Debates is another way to have students be the teacher. There's nothing like throwing out a question. We have our older students talking about whether the South should have seceded. Right? Go and debate. Right? So what you want to make sure you're doing is, and I love the vision that Heather had, is you want to set the buffet up, but you don't want to allow them to have a food fight. And so making sure that they're very clear on what the prompt is, and making it a good and juicy one, making sure that students then understand how to investigate that and then come together for a structured debate, one where you've got very clear rules on how much time is going to be allowed, what they're kind of the rules of the road, and even helping students recognize what effective rhetoric is and having the conversation before the debate starts. Like, let's all decide what are our rules. If they are old enough, they will have had in some sort of teaching of informal logic potentially, or this is the way to help learn informal logic. You talk about, well, what is good reasoning? Should you attack the person? No, that takes us off of our topic. We're going to stick to our topic. So having good rules of the road and even teaching them logic along the way. I believe in teaching them formal logic and informal logic in a structured setting will help them be better debaters, but you can also help them learn what it is in the moment. Debates encourage students to research well, formulate arguments, present their views on a given topic in a structured period of time. Yes? Right, so that's interesting. I think you need to be flexible, but we've, right. So you can do a couple of things. You can have the group play different roles. So someone could be the researcher. Someone could be the one who's kind of paying attention to, say, informal fallacies that are being spoken. So it's not, it could be one or two people from each team doing the speaking, but you can give students different roles, which I think is really important because, again, you're teaching about more than just the subject matter. You're really teaching them how to communicate with one another. So I think that that's a good way to handle it. If you do have multiple people speak, so often in a debate, if you had 1v1, you might have someone present their ideas and then also the counter ideas, but you can really give them, you can give 4 students or more roles that are speaking. Some are presenting the ideas, some are addressing the counterpoints. So.
When you let the teacher when you let the student be the teacher, where are you physically in the room?
That is a great question. So in Socratic seminar, I am way outside the circle. I am, you're right. I really want the students almost to forget that I'm there. And believe me, there are times where I'm just biting my tongue. But what I've learned how to do is I'll write it down. Because what I want to do is I want to teach my students how to either follow up on something or how to question something, or if either something about the subject matter that they're talking about that maybe they missed, and I really wanted them to discuss it. So I'll write those things down, and then I'll leave time at the end to talk those through. And so I'll say, remember when, Fred said this, then, what sorts of questions could we ask? What did we leave on the table? Or I'll say, if someone missed something that I thought was really important about the text, I might say, well, had you ever considered this? And let them talk about it. So as a class, as a follow-up. A debate, I'm evaluating potentially how well they're doing on that debate. I usually have my students both grade themselves and others on both the Socratic seminars and debates. Really, I do peer evaluation for even just presentations in general too. I want them to recognize a couple of things. Number one, you can give constructive feedback. And it's not just, oh, he did great. No, what does constructive feedback look like? And then can you take it? And I think it's important that the students learn how to do both. Great questions, by the way. So we've talked about Socratic seminars, we've talked about debates, then there are straight-on presentations. Having students lead a lesson. We have something in our, we have something called an omnibus class. It's history, literature, cultural appreciation, all wrapped up in one. And we have students deliver presentations. We call it, oh, now it's just leaving me. We call it PPP. Something about sorry. My brain just left me. They pick a person at the beginning of the semester that is a famous person during the time period that they're studying, and they have to research that person thoroughly. Then they have to come dressed as the person, and they just speak about why this person is significant, what was important about their lives, and the students get into it. It's amazing like how elaborate their costumes are. If they don't have time in class, depending on how your school is structured, the students will video it and then put it out for their students to review it. And again, peers are reviewing peers. And so students really, everyone takes this project very seriously. Again, they don't want to be outdone by someone else. They don't want to seem like they were unprepared and have kind of fall in front of everyone else. And so these are really wonderful, wonderful opportunities for students to learn about a lot of different people without the teacher having to always be talking about the significance of these folks. So it really engages students on both ends, the one who's presenting as well as the students who are listening. Just student-led presentations, and we do this in science, we do this in history, we do this for geography. Students will all pick a different country or state and investigate it and put together a presentation. Certainly those of you who have done science projects, science fairs, those are always really engaging for students. And so it really helps students learn how to dive deeply into in a topic and then present that to others. Yes?
I have a question regarding the student presentations.
Yes.
I think you mentioned something about like you allow the students to, once the students give the presentation, their peers will like assess them or kind of grade
Yes.
them, critique them. How would you, when it comes to, as the teacher, when it comes to grading the actual presentation for that student that presented, how do you take the critique or the assessment from the peers? How do you mix that into your grade? Like how does that affect your grade?
That's a great question. So I used to have students mark so the rubric that I use to grade the student, I would give to all of the students and have them grade. And I'll tell you, I didn't like that. I revised doing that because either you'll get students who are really harsh or they don't understand like that 3 out of 5 is a 60%. Like they didn't get that. They just thought, oh, I marked 2 off, let's say. So they didn't understand the gravity of the numbers that they were using. And I thought it was far more important that they learn how to articulate constructive feedback. So if I think about that peer review as a teaching tool, I wanted them to learn how to do that well. And it was less about the numbers. So what I do, when I teach my classical rhetoric, I do the grading versus the rubric, and then I cut and paste peer feedback. And so they get this sheet from me that has my scores and my feedback as well as peer feedback. I think that if you're doing something a little less formal than a formal presentation like that, then even just verbally giving critique to students is helpful.
The reason why, I'm sorry to interrupt, the reason why I asked
Yes.
Do I just average out the assessment, the grade that they gave Johnny? But like you said, there might be some people that are extremely critical and others that are like, no, he's my friend, whatever. He gets like he did all right. So like I'm trying to wonder because I'm thinking how I can incorporate that in my history class or in my Bible class.
Yeah. So I grade people on their feedback, not super harshly, but let's say it's 10 points. And if someone is like, yeah, it was good, then I will give them a low grade on their evaluation of their peers.
Oh, wow.
I know I'm
That's
mean.
good. That's
Mean
good.
teacher.
That's great though. So like you're grading Johnny for his presentation.
Yes.
That's one grade.
Mm-hmm.
But then for everyone else in the class, you're grading their critique of Johnny.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
Can I add something?
Yes.
It's also a great way to incorporate developing fair-mindedness in their thinking, both as an intellectual standard and an intellectual trait. So I taught gifted kids, so they have a tendency oftentimes to be hypercritical,
Yes.
which is not accurate usually. You know, so I would have conversations with them. Okay, some of you are going to blow this off. Some of you are going to be, oh, I did absolutely horrible. Neither of those two things are true.
Mm-hmm.
So it gives you having the rubric available to students and having them critique the work of others. Then I ask them, have you been fair-minded in your thinking? Because that's a trait we want everybody to have, right?
I have 7 minutes.
I was told that I had it closer to 35.
Oh, no one told me that. Okay.
But that's not a tool you can. Are you being fair-minded?
Yes, and I think, and that's so important, right? We want to, when we're looking at the broader idea that education is about human flourishing, that we're trying to teach these little humans how to be good big humans. We want to teach them how to do that, right? Not be overly self-critical, but humble. We want them to learn how to give good constructive feedback. And so using the tools that we have to be able to do that. The other concept that we use at our school as student as teacher is we have a scholars program. We call it CCA Scholars, and students who have done exceptionally well in a class are signed off by the teacher to be a tutor of students who are younger than they are. This is a beautiful thing. It is, I love seeing our students learn how to be good peers and teachers to their fellow students one-on-one. So the way our Scholars program works is if a student would like to be a CCA Scholar, then they have to go to the teacher of that subject and get signed off. Once they do that, I put them on a list of students who are willing to tutor in the subject that they got signed off on. And then parents will pay that CCA Scholar $10 an hour. So minimal compared to normal tutoring. So students get a little bit of money. They feel some leadership and autonomy. It's a big deal. My CCA Scholars get a pin. It's a big deal. They take it seriously. We evaluate as teachers how they're doing in that peer-to-peer situation. And we've got students who feel like they're called to a teaching profession. We encourage them, well, this is a great way to learn how to do that. See if you like it. And so it's a great opportunity for them. And students really love learning from their peers. They're good mentors to them. It's great encouragement. They don't want to let their CCA Scholar down. It helps parents feel like they're not so overwhelmed because they've got help in guiding their student. And so all around, it's a really wonderful program. The last thing I want to talk to you about is this collaborative projects. Christopher Perrin last night was asked about projects. I'm not a huge one on group projects, but I think having a very specific thing that you're working on, having students work on, I think it can work. But I think you've got to be mindful of the fact that you don't want to have a situation where students are aimless, or there's one student that takes on all of the work. So you've got to be mindful of that. But what I think is really important, and I hope you take away from this, is that students are so capable of really taking control of their learning in an environment that helps foster independent learning. And in this idea of student as teacher, you elevate your expectation of these students that no, you've got something to contribute. So there's purpose to what it is they're doing. And it really elevates the learning experience for them and their peers. So, all right, well, thank you so much for your attention. And we'll be back in the lunchroom, right? Our grand ballroom.